When I talk about the microbiome, mostly what I'm talking about is the microbiome that's inside of us, inside the gut, because that is the biggest reservoir of the microbiome, especially in the large intestine where there's up to 100 trillion bacterial species. So it outnumbers our own cells, and the aggregate DNA of that microbiome outnumbers our DNA, I think, about 100 to 1. So we're actually these super organisms that are vehicles for these little microbes to live and replicate, and they play an extremely important role in our health.
Really, we are dependent upon our microbiome to function appropriately, and frankly, that means we should be taking uber care of them, because not having them creates a lot of problems for us.
We should be thinking about how should you eat in order to support your microbiome. I know everybody thinks about like how do we eat to be healthy, to have good heart health, to have low blood sugar, but really, you know, I almost think of this meme in my head, and it's human as a super organism, and then it's like a spaceship, and in the head you've got the little microbes actually are in the control panel pulling the levers and controlling things. I know it's an oversimplification, but in many ways, I think for so many years, like we even thought like diabetes is an issue with the pancreas. And yet now we're understanding that metabolic syndrome and blood sugar control is modulated by the gut microbiome. So it's not just the pancreas. We have to think of the gut microbiome as almost like an accessory organ of the body that is metabolically active, that helps us metabolize our hormones, that produces its own set of postbiotic products like short-chain fatty acids that have a whole host of very important influences in the body that could either be good or be bad, depending on the gut bugs and the type of postbiotic products that they are producing. But the important takeaway is that they play a much more important role in our health than we have given credence to in the history of medicine up until now.
So you have a collection of bugs and all kinds of, I guess, what's the right word to describe it? If you had to say there are 5 things in our microbiome, what are they?
We've got bacteria.
Okay.
Right, we've got another set of bacteria that are called archaea, which are kind of like bacteria, but they're not quite bacteria. Then we've got yeast, we have parasites, we have singular cellular protozoa maybe. You might have a worm in there, just don't know. A lot of us are carrying parasites that are either causing a problem or may not be causing a problem at a certain moment. Certainly parasites are not good and can cause a lot of disruption. So basically, think of it as this ecosystem.
Okay.
So kind of like a rainforest. You have this incredible ecosystem inside your gut. And that ecosystem, just like a rainforest, when it's in balance, it works well. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the documentary, The Biggest Little Farm.
No, but I'm going to.
And it's a documentary about they recreated a farm on this land where the soil was unfarmable. So it was this whole process of recreating an entire ecosystem. And they realized how everything served a purpose. So even having some, I think they had coyotes. So even having the coyotes, which is a predator, was an important balancing part of the ecosystem. So same thing in the gut. We've got a certain number of quote unquote bad bugs. And I think we have to evolve our understanding of, you know, are they really bad, or are they just bad if they overgrow? But are they good in a certain percentage? Because part of the work that I did when I was looking and doing research for my new book, The Gut Smart Protocol, I had the opportunity to go on this trip to Africa. And I went with a small group, and part of the trip was to go meet and stay with the Hadza, one of the last hunter-gatherer tribes on the planet. Now, why was I so interested in going to Africa and hanging out with these hunter-gatherers? It's because someone had the foresight to ask the question, I wonder what's in their poop. Because they haven't been on antibiotics. they don't have diabetes, they don't have obesity, they don't have cardiovascular disease, they don't have dementia. They're quite healthy, and they're these hunter-gatherers who don't have access to modern conveniences, and the types of foods that they eat are pretty limited given that they're hunting and gathering, so they get what's available. But the really cool thing is that they looked and they did studies on their gut microbiome and looked at what type of bacteria do they have. You know, are they similar? They are basically a human time capsule into what has been the history of humanity. For 95% of our history, we were hunter-gatherers. It's only in this last part of our history, in the last, couple of thousands of years, it's only this last part where we started domesticating plants, animals, and, leaving our hunter-gatherer lifestyle. But we were hunter-gatherers for thousands of years before the last 2,000 to 3,000 years. So it's like going in a human time capsule. They're not exposed to antibiotics for the most part. There might be some exceptions, but mostly they haven't been exposed to antibiotics. So you can look at, well, what happened? What does a gut look like for a hunter-gatherer who hasn't been exposed to antibiotics? And the interesting thing is they have some bugs that if I took that bug and put it into your gut, would probably make you extremely sick because they are what we would consider certain bad bugs, like a treponema, which is the bacteria, the spirochete that causes syphilis. And yet, in them, it doesn't cause any manifestations of the disease. So then they ask, well, what does this gut bug do? The treponema is actually quite skilled at breaking down plant fibers. And since they eat a very high fiber diet, that treponema is helping break down those fibers so they can use them for energy. So it's quite fascinating, So when we're defining what is bad, what is good, I think it depends on the scenario, the condition of the person. Obviously their gut is skilled and capable of tolerating being out and eating things without washing them. So they have this very resistant, resilient gut that is capable of handling probably exposure to a whole host of types of organisms that we would not be able to handle.